Hello there, everyone. Good afternoon. This is Patrick Bavaro here at Handtevy, and I wanted to thank you for joining us for today's presentation on the Handtevy system. We're still a few minutes early, but know that we have a good number of attendees here that have joined us, so I wanted to go ahead and start this lobby up and just give some initial kind of house rules before we begin. As you know, myself and Dr. Handtevy today will be giving the presentation. We're expecting it to be about 30 or so minutes in length. I know that with so many people on today's presentation, we will likely have a lot of questions. So if you do have any questions, feel free to go ahead and type those into your control panel, your question section there within GoToWebinar, and we will address those towards the end of the presentation. With so many folks on here, we're just gonna go ahead and keep everybody muted for the time being, but I'm glad to see we have some familiar names on here. See Matt Drake, David Lambert, Jason Smith, Jill Perry. Hey, Jill. We were just talking about you, me and Pete, the other day, actually. Scott Clark, Tom Booth. Tom wanted to come back for more. So Tom joined us last week on our presentation on Handtevy, and excited to have you back. But let's go ahead and sit tight for another 2 minutes or so. We went ahead and put out a poll just to kind of gauge what everyone's familiarity with Handtevy is already. And we'll go ahead and sit tight for the next 2 minutes, or rather 1 minute now, and we'll go ahead and fire it up. All right, thank you everyone for answering those polls. That helps our team here to kind of just get an idea of what everyone's sense of Handtevy is so far, and I'm excited to see the numbers that we're seeing here. All right, but it is now 2:30, so let's go ahead and begin. I'll go ahead and give a quick introduction to myself, and then I'll go ahead and pass it over to Doc Handtevy so he can introduce himself. He will be the one giving the presentation today. But for those of you that have not had a chance to meet yet, my name is Patrick Bavaro. I am the sales director here at Handtevy. I've been working here probably for about the last 5 years now, full time. Came from a background of fire EMS out here in South Florida originally, and we're very excited to have you on today's presentation. For those of you that just joined us here a few minutes ago, again, we do have a good number of participants that have joined us for today's presentation, so we are going to go ahead and keep everybody on mute. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to type them into the question tab there, and we will go ahead and answer those at the end of our presentation during our Q&A session. But Doc, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll go ahead and begin.
Patrick, thank you very much. First of all, can you see me? Because I can't see if my camera's on or not.
Yeah, we can see you.
All right, so hi everybody.
Thanks for having the shirt on.
Yeah, I got the shirt on now. I'm good. So I'll keep the video camera on for a little bit here, but I wanted to say hi to everybody and thank you guys, all those who have been with us for a long time and those who are just learning about us today. We're coming from my home office here in Florida, and we thought it'd be a good time to move away from the COVID craziness. If it's anything like what's going on in your neck of the woods, here it's been 24/7, 365, working our tails off to try and make things better. And what I'm really proud about is that in my agencies here in South Florida, we only have one, maybe a second person who are positive COVID. They both recovered. One's recovered and one we don't think even had it, just had some symptoms of it. But we have a lot of people who work down here, and we've done really a lot to kind of keep everyone safe, and I hope you guys are doing the same. I know we're kind of on the downswing, but at the end of the presentation, I'm gonna have a QR code. I have a Dropbox full of policies and procedures and research papers and anything you want. And so at the end, I get requested that a lot. You can just take the QR code and you can just, well, we say R&D, rip off and duplicate any of the information in there. But switching gears and coming to Handtevy here, we have a lot of kind of very good updates for the people who never heard about us before. I'll give you a little bit of an overview. And then at the end, we'd love to open it up. We had a great feedback last time on last week's webinar. Like Patrick said, there's a little hand raise icon. So if you want to speak, I actually would love to hear your voice afterwards. Raise your hand and Patrick will unmute you and we'll talk back and forth. If not, just put your questions in the question bar. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So I know most of you know this, but I'm a pediatric ER doc trained in LA, Pittsburgh, and then been back in South Florida since 2005. And then in 2010, can't believe it's been a decade already, I became a medical director at Davie Fire Rescue. And that really changed my life forever. And now I'm just with numerous agencies. I'm proud to say that I work with 2,000 of the most amazing, heroic people in the pre-hospital arena. And that's kind of where I live mainly today. This story comes from my trials and tribulations of making mistakes in the emergency department, seeing many mistakes made in EMS, and finally come to the realization that it doesn't matter how smart you are, if you're given a tool that doesn't work or a system that doesn't work, or you're using the wrong mental pathways, you'll never be successful. We're now in over in all 50 states and over 1,300 cities around this country, and really proud to say that a lot of lives are being saved, and that's our core mission, obviously. So the agenda, why is this even important? And again, I thank you guys for taking some time off from what's going on in your cities and in your communities to talk pediatrics, which is important. Dogmalysis, which I call basically we've been following the same pattern for so long, and it turns out that a lot of those major principles are completely wrong. And I'm ashamed to say that I was the one kind of saying those principles for a long time. And so now I have 3 basic principles for pediatric out-of-hospital cardiac arrest that I'm going to share today. The data is very important. So just like anything you do in medicine, you better follow your data, you better read the literature. We're happy to say that we have lots of data on Handtevy, on the outcomes from Handtevy, and we're always taking that data to make ourselves better. And with respect to getting better, I'm going to hand it to Patrick in the middle of the presentation to go through the Handtevy Mobile demonstration. And then I'm going to show you our new feature, which is now being beta tested in about 40 different places around this country, which is what we call Handtevy CPR Assist. I don't know about you, but I've never found a metronome that works for everything I need. So this is the metronome that I sat with my team and we hand-carved, handcrafted, and now it's being beta tested by some amazing departments. And we're going to use that feedback so that when it finally rolls out, we're going to have just an amazing product. So I'm going to show you that today. We've also partnered with an amazing education company called Prodigy. They're a learning management software. They're EMS people just like us. And we have had a lot of requests for Handtevy Course, but they say, hey, we can't go to the course, we can't become an instructor. So we've now developed a 2-hour online education didactic portion, which will be followed at your agency by a 2-hour hands-on portion. So we've kind of streamlined the education using Prodigy. There's no need to sign up and pay for a Prodigy account. You just have to, it would just be the cost of the certificate. That's all that would be. So I'm going to show you that a little later on, and then we'll do some question and answer from you guys. Hopefully you won't be shy and you'll actually unmute your microphone. And so I always start with this slide because this is a slide that really moves me every single day. I understand that in the pre-hospital arena, if you're a child who has a cardiac arrest outside the hospital, since 1980, your outcomes haven't changed. In hospital, and we're talking about neuro-intact survival, kids who are playing soccer again. So what is different about the in-hospital versus the out-of-hospital? Why is it that in the adults we do much better out-of-hospital, but in pediatrics we don't? So these are all questions I ask you on the front end because you probably have some sort of kind of thing you're telling yourself of why the children don't do as well. But I will tell you that everything you're telling yourself is untrue, and I'm going to hopefully prove that to you today with the data that we have. And that data, by the way, comes from PALS itself, and that paragraph right there it says that statistics haven't changed. We don't know why. But I can tell you folks, I know why, and now we've proven why. And so I hope that you all can do that. And the way that I'm going to convince you of it is not by teaching you new medicine, not by doing something. Hold on, someone's knocking on my door. Yes, hold on a second. Buddy, on a call. Okay. All right, that's what happens when you're working from home. So this is basically a concept where I'm going to nudge you in a direction. It's called behavioral economics. I'm just going to nudge you away from the thought process you were in into more the adult ACLS type of mentality, and then you'll understand how easy pediatrics can be. So it turns out that this whole unlock is nothing more than just a kind of a behavioral change that opens the door to confidence and clarity on scene. And I'm going to prove that to you right now. So here's a case, and you're probably saying to yourself, okay, he's going to ask me some questions now. Yeah, I'm going to ask you some questions. What would you do for this kid? Is a stable SVT, blood pressure is normal, heart rate's 200. And a lot of you are probably thinking, okay, I know a drug to give, but then if I say to you, what other information do you need? So I'm going to stop right there, and I'm going to say, let's not worry about this kid right now. Let's go to the adult. And so here's the adult, 42-year-old SVT. What would you do for this guy? And hopefully you're all noticing that your thought process between this kid and this guy completely changed on a 180. Now you're probably saying, I'm going to vagal the guy. Actually, I'm going to pick on Patrick. Patrick. Okay, so tell me, 42-year-old guy, stable SVT. What are you going to do first?
Well, we're going to try to vagal first.
Okay, you vagal him and nothing works. Still 200, still stable.
All right,
I'll give you an 18 gauge in the right AC.
All right, perfect. So we're going to do a first round of adenosine.
Okay, perfect. For a first round of adenosine, it doesn't work.
We'll go for second round of adenosine.
Okay, good. You gave the second round of adenosine, still doesn't work, and now the guy's hypotensive.
All right, so now we're going to consider doing some electrical therapy probably, but before we want to do that, we're going to want to give some sedation, so we'll probably use some fentanyl.
Perfect. You gave some fentanyl, and then you cardioverted him, and perfect, it worked, but now he's still hypotensive.
So now we're going to want to think about giving some saline, get some blood pressure higher.
Okay, good. That works, and now he starts vomiting all over your ambulance.
Some Zofran and a cleanup crew.
Okay, perfect. So you see how easy that was? Adenosine, fentanyl, cardioversion, saline, and Zofran. And all of you knew the dose, you knew exactly what to give. And so if I take you back again to this kid, what is truly different about this kid and the other guy? It turns out that the algorithm, right, vagal, adenosine, fentanyl, cardioversion, saline, Zofran was the same. Really the only thing there was something different, was now that someone taught you many years ago that you have to, don't think about it before you get to the scene. En route, you're going to panic. You're going to get to the scene. You're going to lay the kid down. You're going to use a length-based tape. You're going to get the kid's weight. Then you're going to look at the milligram dose. You're going to divide it by the concentration. And you're going to volume dose. So getting from point A to point B in the adult, where you knew it en route to the call, to the kid, where all of a sudden we told you to do the exact opposite. Don't do it en route to the call. Get to the scene. Do everything on scene in front of mom and dad. That's the problem. And so can we treat the kid the same as the adult? And you say 2-year-old cardiac arrest, 2-year-old seizure, 2-year-old hypoglycemia. Hey, you know what? I can pre-plan before I get to the scene. So when I get to mom and dad, I'm looking them straight in the eye, and I actually can treat the child the right way. It's subtle, but it's huge, huge. I can't even say how big that is. And all we did there was we nudged you. We nudged you away from thinking like a pediatric PALS guru to an ACLS person. That's what we're trying to keep you, ACLS. There shouldn't be a second thing that you think you have to be. You're the same person and you're treating the same disease, right? That's the important part. Okay, so here's a perspective. In the adult world for cardiac arrest in Palm Beach County, we came in 2015, myself and Dr. Ken Shepke, and we did 3 things. Number 1, we said we're going to stay on scene for 20 minutes. Number 2, high performance CPR. And the third thing is that we're going to give 2 big breaths, and we're not going to give any more positive pressure for about 6 minutes. And then every single medic got a code stat report, and you can see that code stat report there doesn't look so good because there's not a lot of compressions in those blank spaces. This is the adult world. Look what we did, and we published this paper last year. In 2014, we weren't there. 2015, this is the ROSC rate. In 2016, it kept going higher. So you can see that by making small changes in the adult population, things just zoomed up and got better within the year, the same year we got there, 2015. But then when I say, what about kids? People say, oh, well, that's a little different story. They kind of turn and walk the other way. But let me explain to you what the real disparities are between adults and children. So let's start with cardiac arrest. Here's your adult. He goes into cardiac arrest, and now, hopefully, his spouse starts bystander CPR. Hopefully, the telecommunicator on 911 gives the right instructions and quick instructions. And then you're en route. You know what to do. You're in a high performance mentality. You get on scene. You take the guy from the toilet bowl and between the toilet bowl and the wall, and you move him into the living room. You move the furniture out, and you get high performance CPR done. You get ROSC, and then you package the guy up, post ROSC assessment, and then you're en route to the hospital. This is a perfectly run call right here. Let's take a look at what happens in children. Lower bystander CPR, really poor telephone CPR, which is a lecture for upon its own. Then you have no pre-planning. We just talked about that. No pre-planning because we weren't taught that way. Then the parents are on the curb and they throw you the kid, and you have 2 choices. One, I'm just going to run and head to the hospital, or stop and do all this medical math in front of mom and dad. Of course, we're going to choose the former. We're going to run. And so most of us, for many years, we're just taking these kids and running them with them in cardiac arrest. So if you look at this screen right here, there is no secret. There is no secret that adults, for the same exact disease that you know exactly what to do, we're doing exactly the opposite. And so again, when I say that this is nothing more than a nudge, this is what I'm talking about. And this is what we do at Handtevy. We just nudge you the other way. And part of the nudge, we figured this out years ago, is that I happened to come across this amazing book by Dr. Daniel Kahneman. The guy is just incredible, Nobel Prize winner. He tries to teach you how your brain thinks. So it's fast thinking and slow thinking. And you know, all the people who are on the call today who I've been to your conferences and I've been to your areas, I've been talking about Kahneman for a long time, and it's just probably the most important concept is that he says that your fast thinking brain is good, but it makes mistakes. And then your slow thinking brain shouldn't even be in the room for EMS. And let me explain why I mean by that. So your fast thinking brain is on the left-hand side. It is thinking without you even wanting it to think. So let me give you an example. Don't look at the screen. You're in a home of a 60-year-old man who's diaphoretic, short of breath, and having left-sided chest pain radiating to his left arm. I'm going to stop there. You all know what this guy has. You all know what to do. You all know where you're going to take him. Because your system 1, once you recognize that this guy was having a likely STEMI, that's it, game over. System 1 is taking off. On the other hand, system 2 is very slow. It's kind of, you have to stop and think. You can't really do it on the fly. The bad part about system 1 is it's very cocky, it's very arrogant, and it makes mistakes. Let me show you what I mean about system 1's pros and its cons, and then explain to you why system 2 should be removed altogether. So if you're looking at this screen right here, and I ask you which line is longer, even though you know, and many of you have seen this before, that the top line is longer, your system 1 wants to yell at you that the top line is longer. But so system 1, for those of you who have seen it before, will never get this one wrong again. So system 1 is fast, right? Watch how fast system 1 is here. So I'm going to be putting up pictures on the screen. Without even telling you what the question is, your system 1 is telling you what the answer was. And the answer there was not sick, sick, and sick. And here's my favorite one. Very sick. Good old Charlie Sheen. So system 1 is very fast, very good for assessment, right? Now let's go though into this question. So try to answer this one and tell me what you think. So most of you are saying, 2 of each kind, but maybe some of you caught this, but it was not Moses on the ark, it was Noah. That was Noah who was banging on the wall too. He's still out there. I just came back from his cruise. So at the end of the day, your brain saw animals, it saw ark, and it said 2, but in reality, your system 1 made a mistake. And that's called a Moses illusion. So this guy's pretty upset at you right now for doing that. But at the end of the day, system 1 made a mistake. Now, does system 1 make mistakes when it comes to mathematics? And the answer is 1,000%. We know the answer yes. And let me show you what I mean. I'm going to give you 9 numbers that are going to show up on the screen here. Once the final number shows up, the screen will disappear. And then I want you guys to go into the question bar, just to make sure you're still awake, and then type in the answer. Okay, let's have a little fun here. Now, some of you may have seen this question before. You can kind of just joke around and put the real answer in, but let's take a look at what everybody else does. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to open up the question panel here and see what people are saying.
Don't worry, Ed. I always get it wrong too, and I've done this probably a dozen times now. This is Patrick.
Let's see. All right, so I'm getting here 6,000, 5,000 something. I love that, Brandon. Thank you. Eric, 5,800. Tyler, 7,000. Donald, 5,100. Thomas is 5,100. Let's see. All right, we're getting a lot of answers here. Thank you guys for chiming in. I would say what we're seeing mainly here is this, 6,000. And so the question is, how could it be that most people get the wrong answer? And it's because your system 1 is not meant to do math quickly. And so if you were in the back of the ambulance and you gave, let's say, a dose of fentanyl, you did the mental math, and you gave, let's say the number 6,000 for the mLs came up, just saying, you gave the number that you just came up with. What are you going to document? Are you going to document the volume? No. You're going to document micrograms of fentanyl, and you're going to document it like an hour later when you're back and you're free. You're going to document that in micrograms. You're not going to document what you gave. You're going to document what you were supposed to give. So just for the fentanyl example, let's say you gave 1 ml, or let's say you gave 2 mLs by accident, but the kid only needed 50 micrograms. When you go back, you're going to document 50 micrograms, and you're going to document 2 mLs, but you gave 2 mLs. So basically what you gave on scene with your mental math and what you documented oftentimes is not the same. So it's very difficult to get the actual right, to get the person to understand that they've made a mistake because they're not documenting the mistake. It's very important. So the right answer, congratulations to those of you who got 5,100. Your brain does not do math well, period, end of story. And system 1 doesn't want to recognize that it even made a mistake once it did. So those are 2 important points to go through. Now let's go to system 2. System 2, it turns out, is all of pediatrics. Pediatrics requires you to stop, get a weight, do a dose per kilo, divided by concentration. It turns out system 2 is a type of brain process you use. Let me show you what I mean. Go ahead and do that one. And the story that always comes back to me is when I was in Cape Cod, and one of the firefighters says to me, "Doc, that's at least 240. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to go through, when you have someone dying in front of you and I tell you what's 24 times 13, you can't do it. So system 2 needs to be understood to be a pediatric thing, but we have to kind of get rid of it. So how do we get rid of system 2? That's the most important piece of this whole puzzle here. It's not going to another course. It's figuring out why your brain hits a wall every single time. And so the story I gave you earlier about the SVT, you knew this. You knew the adenosine, the fentanyl, the cardioversion, saline, the Zofran, but your brain said, stop, I need to wait, I need a dose per kilo divided by concentration, and I can only do that when I get there in front of mom and dad with a length-based tape laying down. That is the problem. On this screen is the main problem. So just to review, system 1 is fast, but makes mistakes that it doesn't recognize. System 2, very good in a nice calm room that I'm in right now with air conditioning and so forth, but it cannot function during stress. And if you're using system 2 on a call, you're done. You can be the smartest guy in the world, the stress will overtake you. And it did me, right? So I'm not immune. I've made medical errors. Thankfully, didn't have any medical errors that did any harm to anybody. But in 2005, I gave a 10-fold overdose, IM, to a girl in anaphylaxis. I gave her 2 ml instead of 0.2 ml. Then I found my medics giving more fentanyl and more midazolam to the fold of 3- and 6-fold more than they should have, right? Then I started to think, wait a minute, I'm making these mistakes. My medics are making these mistakes. When I went back to the chart, nothing was charted inaccurately. The correct dose was there. So I said to myself, Houston, there's a big problem here. And here's why the problem is because if you take a step-by-step look at what we're doing, when you know a 2-year-old in anaphylaxis and you have 6 minutes en route and you're forced to use a length-based tape and do all the mathematics, the bottom line is that when mom and dad are right in front of you, this will never get done and you will decide to leave. And so speaking of a length-based tape, many of you who don't use Handtevy use Broslow. And Broslow is a great man. He's a legend in our field. Really, truly nice guy too. But you can see that the tape is not customized. The medications you have on your protocol and the concentrations you have on here don't match up. And we actually looked at this, and it's a tune of 50% discordance, 50%. So you have a tool that's giving you information which is at odds with the information that's in your protocol, and then people wonder why they were making mistakes. I didn't realize this until I became a medical director in 2010. So how do we get to a point where we end up at a confident level where you can be on the scene confident? It turns out that a pre-arrival plan gets you to the point that when you arrive on the scene, you can look people in the eyes. That's kind of that's my metric. Can you look mom and dad in the eyes right when you get off of your vehicle? That's the teller to me that you're going to be good. So we're not going to go through the layperson and telephone CPR today because I want to focus on EMS. And I'm going to share with you a story that Patrick and I just got last night. It was shared on Facebook. I'll share it with you at the very end of today's presentation. That it's all about EMS getting a pulse back to get the kid back to the hospital alive so that the hospital can then take over and discharge a normal neurologically intact child. You are the key. EMS is the key to life saving in children. End of story, period. Okay, very important to understand that. So on this next screen are the 2 principal points that need to change for this to happen. Number 1, you have to have a pre-arrival plan. And what I mean by plan is you have to know things like the epi dose, 1 in 10,000, IV or IO. You have to know the airway size. So we use the supraglottic airway, the iGel. Some of you may use the King, the AirQ, the LMA, I don't care. You have to know those 2 pieces of information at a minimum for every single call. Broke my finger, 3-year-old, you need to know that it's a 1.5 cc's of epi and it's a size 2 iGel. End of story, right? Okay. Then when you get to the scene, you need to have, for cardiac arrest, very, very high BLS focus. You have to have someone keeping the family member informed. And here's what I mean. When mom and dad see you come into the scene, there's one thing that they're wondering, which is why aren't you leaving yet? Because they've been programmed with all these shows on TV and blah, blah, blah. They need to know that we are not leaving. So you have to say something like, Mom, I know this is very stressful. My team is here. Your child, unfortunately, doesn't have a heart rate right now. We're doing CPR. You can see that we're actually providing an airway. We need just 5 minutes. This is the best chance for your child to come back to life. Stand right next to me. I'm going to keep you updated. and then in a few minutes we're gonna leave to the children's hospital down the street. Is that okay? And 99 times out of 100, the parents will say, oh, this guy looked me in the eyes. He knew exactly what he was doing. And then he's only asking me to stay for a couple of minutes. And yes, we're going to do that. If you don't say that, the parent's going to start spinning up. And you're going to say, we're done. And the anxiety level is too high for you to stay on scene. That's number one. The second part of that is early epinephrine. And I'll show you some data on why epi has to be given within the first 5 minutes of your arrival. If not, it probably won't make a difference. So these two things that you're seeing on the screen are the most important way to change the game in pediatrics. So yes, our course follows the PALS guidelines. Yes, we teach all the basic principles as PALS on our course, but we also teach you how to do this. And that's why there's a mandatory hands-on component for Handtevy that will never go away. And now we've kind of shortened it thanks to Prodigy, and which we're in beta testing right now. But once that rolls out, you can do a 2-hour online and then only 2 hours in the department, and that's what you'll need. And so we're really grateful for that. So I have a video here that I'm going to show you exactly that process. There's one of my lieutenants in Palm Beach County. You'll hear him say the word King tube. This was recorded before we moved to the iGel. But we have a three-person crew here. He's going to tell everyone what their role is and what either the epi dose or the joules dose or the tube size. He'll have all that information prior to arrival. So hopefully the audio comes out okay here. Let's first talk about pre-arrival. Before you enter the scene or pediatric arrest, you have to be mentally ready.
Hey, listen, it's a 7-year-old looks like a drowning. If it's an actual cardiac arrest, you're gonna be airway, you'll be CPR, I'll be monitored and drilling, all right? Since your airway, your King's gonna be either a 2.5 or a 3, depending on which side it is, but it can go either or, all right? Defibrillation, the first is a 50, the rest are 100. 50 to 100, the rest are the rest. The EPIs are 2.5 mLs, and if they're in FIB or they're in VTAC, we'll do in the other one is 2.5 ml as well. All right, I'm gonna drill Mark.
Okay, so what's always interesting when I watch that is that this is all staged, and you can see he's still nervous, right? No matter what you do until you get this down, the pediatric thing just gets you because that's your system 2 firing off, telling you system 2 stuff. But we got the system 2 stuff, we threw it out the window here because now everyone knows exactly what they're going to do. When these 3 guys get to the scene, and I know some of you don't have 3 people, I get it. Some of you only have a medic and an EMT, I get that too. But there's ways to train on that. When they get to the scene, he could look right at the mom, he could talk to the mom, and the team comes down and doesn't do any talking because everyone knows exactly what they're going to do, and there's no intention to leave, which is a very big thing. So what I want to do now is I want to turn it over to Patrick, and Patrick, I'll give you the controls here. If you want to take over and go ahead and show the Handtevy Mobile, and after that, I'll take it back over and we'll go through some of the other features, the other new features.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Doc. So, listening to Doc there, 99% of you are probably telling yourselves, there ain't no way, especially if you've never seen anything relating to Handtevy or ever going through any of the education before, but there ain't no way that I'm going to be staying on scene, treating this pediatric patient, talking with mom and dad. There's just no way to do that. And I think what we're trying to really install here into our minds is that there needs to be some way of achieving that cognitive offload to focus on treatment of underlying patient care as opposed to worrying about our math being wrong, doing something detrimental, wanting to get to the hospital as quickly as possible. There needs to be some way to go about doing that. And when we look at adult medicine, what we find is that a lot of those kind of cognitive offload items, such as med math and things like that, have really been kind of taken away from us. If we look at our, prefilled EPIs as an example, our Benadryls, et cetera, they more or less come pre-packaged, or they're very easy to know what the dose and volume of that medication is going to be. With pediatrics, that tends to be a very different story because we know that kids are growing differently, different anatomies, different concentrations are being carried due to shortages, things like that. So how do we go about doing that? So here at Handtevy, the way that we do that is through our primary resource and product called Handtevy Mobile. And so right now, what we're looking at is a generic version of our system that's simply titled EMS Integration. But the key takeaway with this resource is that what we do here at Handtevy is that we actually build out this system designed and tailored around your local protocol and your local pharmacology. So we take into account your equipment, your drips, your electrical, and we make this unique for you guys and for your service. That way you're able to focus on that treatment of underlying patient care confidently, aggressively, and safely. And the nice thing about Handtevy Mobile is that it is a cloud-based technology. So, it is compatible with iOS, Android, and Windows devices. And once your teams log into it for the first time, from that point forward, you never have to remember a username, you never have to remember a password, and it lives natively within inside of the device. So it's all cached locally. The other nice benefit to this is that it is accessible on all personal and unit devices. It's not a per unit, per license type of setup. But when we go ahead and click into our patient here, let's say we hit add new patient, what we're going to find is that we have all the same patient populations that you're already used to actually identifying. So you'll see that we follow the same exact color schemes that everyone's used to. We cover a preemie 2 kilo down to a 13-year-old 60 kilo patient, but then we also cover our 75 kilo and 100 kilo adult patient. So, what I think it's important to realize is that, as Doc mentioned, we're not changing the science or the medicine as to why you're giving these medications or what these medications are used for. But what we're doing here is we're simply enhancing your ability to go about treating these pediatric patients. And so one thing that you will notice that on our screen here on the left-hand side of it, you'll see is going to be ages correlating to that ideal body weight. So here at Handtevy, we're very big believers in age being our primary resource and kind of first-line indication of what that patient's ideal body weight should be. And the reason being in that, here in EMS, when we get dispatched to a call, we typically have an age-associated dispatch coming through that call. So, 2-year-olds trouble breathing, suspected anaphylaxis, femur fracture, whatever the case might be. Well, prior to arrival, that pre-arrival information kind of planning process is very important to us in having a good, successful outcome. We want to be stepping off our trucks looking like, Superman, Superwoman, here to save the day, and not looking like diaphoretic medic, right? So on the left-hand side of your screen there, you will see ages correlating to ideal body weight. Getting dispatched to that 2-year-old suspected drowning or femur fracture, you're able to know that 2-year-old patient ideally weighs 12 kilos. Now, if you show up on scene to find that 2-year-old patient happens to be Shaquille O'Neal's kid, well, that's going to be when you pull your backup, Handtevy length-based tape, measure the kid, they fall into your color scheme, and then from there, you would simply revert back to treatments. But if we were to go ahead and click into one of these medications, or patients now rather, and let's say we click into our 2-year-old, what you're going to find is that we do have a list of all the medications listed out here alphabetically that you guys carry there in your drug box according to your protocols, listed out for you here A to Z. We have all the concentrations you carry, the volumes pre-calculated, so the math is done for you, along with all the routes of availability that you're administering by. And one thing you'll also notice is that some of these medications here are color-coded in different ways. So sometimes folks will put their cardiac arrest drugs in red, RSI in blue, calm control black and yellow. They'll put notation underneath it specifying this epi's for anaphylaxis, this ketamine's for excited delirium. However you and your team really want to tailor those medications and those kind of specificities are really up to you and your team to decide how to go about doing that. But again, this is giving you that cognitive aid and that cognitive offload to relieve that stress that comes along with worrying about, do we do our math right? Are we doing something detrimental? Are we withholding care because we don't want to give that medication because we're not confident in our med math? So, when we go ahead and click into one of these medications here, what we'll find is that we have all of our pertinent drug info there, giving us our volume, our route, our concentration, and our dose. And when we hit given, what ends up happening now is that it actually turns it green and timestamps that, indicating that one round of medication has been administered. So in the background, and as we're going through this, what it's actually doing now is actually building out a nice, neat chart summary of everything that's kind of transpiring during this patient care encounter. And when we go through our drips, you'll see again that we have all of our drips rated in milliliters per hour, drops per minute, depending on how you guys are administering them by. Go down to our equipment. We have all of our equipment sized appropriately based off what you guys are carrying. We tried an ET tube 4.0 to 4.5 cuffed. We'll say that we were unsuccessful. We do an iGel size 2 now. We'll say that we're successful. And then let's say we look at our electrical, and you'll see we have our defib and cardioversion settings there based upon the monitor type you're using. And so this will actually round just that next appropriate setting there on that monitor. But as we're going through and recording these pieces of information here, what it's actually doing is, again, building out that chart summary that can then be dumped directly into the flow chart of your patient care record inside of various EPCR products like ESO, Image Trend, and various others. So it works very similar to how a cardiac monitor interface would work. And you'll see that you still can make edits and adjustments to these after you record them. But at the top there, it'll say Patrick Bavaro, that clinician recorded it. We'll hit submit. That now loads up to your cloud. And then inside that patient care record, and I'll demonstrate on both ESO and Image Trend what that looks like. What you'll find is that we have our import feature for Handtevy listed there. This is Image Trend right now. You'll see that we have the name of the provider who sent it, the age of the patient, the date and time that it was sent. And all we would simply do is say that we want to import that patient chart now. And that now brings all that information directly over to that flow chart, giving us our timestamps, our routes, our concentrations, and our dose. And really it does about 95% of the patient care workload. But the only thing really left of you to do is just validate patient response and things like that. And I'm not sure how this is over by everyone throughout the country. I know down here in South Florida, this tends to be somewhat true in that, our guys are running these very high call volume days, back-to-back type calls. And what typically ends up happening is that we have our crews respond to a call, and we'll use this as an example, at 12 o'clock on the dot. Oops, let me mute this. We'll have them show up to a call at 12 o'clock on the dot. And what ends up happening is that they're treating that patient. Let's say they gave 3 medications, they transport, they're off to another call. And then 4, 5, 6 hours after that first call came in, they're going back to finish their charts and kind of going back and backlogging things. And what they're typically doing is, they're going back to their timestamps to say, okay, I was there at 12 o'clock, I was there for 15 minutes, I gave 3 drugs. So my first one was at 12:05, my second was at 12:10, and my third was at 12:15. And what we know is that on paper, that all looks accurate and that all looks awesome. But from a QA and data perspective, what we know is that those probably are not our true administration times. And so when we're putting that type of false data into the system, on the back end, we're going to be getting that false data as well. And we're really not going to be able to properly QA, where we need to improve upon and what we need to work on. And that same system 1, system 2 thought process kind of ties into this idea in the sense that what we also have happen is our guys going back to reference protocols hours after the event took place. When they're finishing their chart to say, okay, my protocol said to give, 1 milligram per kilo, kid weighed 10 keys, I gave, 10 milligrams, and that's what we're documenting in our chart. Well, how do we know that we gave 10 milligrams, 6 hours after the event? And that same process of that, 6,000, 5,100 math equation that Doc threw up here a few minutes ago ties directly into that, and that we don't know. That's the thing of it. We don't know that we gave those medications 6 hours after the fact, because we could have given med error without us ever really realizing that med error was ever given. And so, having this way of cognitive offload to improve patient safety, clinician safety, and overall get positive patient outcomes, it's really what is needed here in the pre-hospital setting for pediatric care. And, those 2 EPCR programs that I just showed, those just happen to be the 2 largest EPCR vendors that we currently do integrate with. We do work with various others, and we are in communications with several, including Zoll, and some others throughout the country. But even if you do not have the integration capability with EPCR vendors, it really is just a value add. The big benefit with Handtevy does come in the cognitive offload and the resources given to you through products like Handtevy Mobile. But there is still a fax and email PDF capability that does live within inside of the mobile product itself, where you can actually send off nice neat chart summaries that look exactly like this to any of your ED locations, EMS chiefs, medical directors, QA, QI folks. So these all can be sent out to you to review at any time. And the last point that I wanted to make before turning it back over to Doc is that, again, I mentioned that Handtevy Mobile is a cloud-based technology. And as you guys are having concentration changes, protocol updates, things like that taking place throughout the year, you or whoever's kind of designated as the point of contact of Handtevy there at your department is very easy and able to go into the system and make those small changes and adjustments, saying that, hey, we no longer carry midazolam 1-to-1, it's now 5-in-1, here's our dose, here's our route, and that gets pushed out as a hard push to all of your end users in just a matter of a few minutes. So it's very easy to do. They never have to hit update or click anything on their own, and that can happen at any point throughout the year. But that was a quick kind of down and dirty just introduction to what Handtevy Mobile is. We do have some additional hard copy kind of durables and resources that we have that go along and in conjunction with Handtevy Mobile. But I'll go ahead and pass it back over to Doc so he can continue on with the presentation and talk a little bit about our education.
Pat, thanks so much. I'm going to see if I can take the screen back here. 1 second. I'll do that. And we'll do that. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Okay, Patrick, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And so you can see here with what Patrick just demonstrated, that's the way to take system 2 out of the equation and move to system 1. He talked about starting with age. Using a length-based tape as a backup is very important, but no more math, and then the hands-on training, which we feel that the total of 4 hours of time really kind of gets you into this new mode of thinking using the same science that you're used to. Part of also what we do is not just focusing on, that 4-hour course where we'll talk about, kind of pediatrics in general, but then as part of the course, and I know on the call with us today is Captain Ryan Gentilcore. Ryan, heads up our educational department, and he's really done an amazing job. And one of the things that we have up on the portal now is things like this, which is the high performance CPR module. So as you're utilizing the Handtevy course, we're going to be giving you multiple modules that you can actually use rather than just using the core content. You can also use content like this, where you're actually getting on the ground, you're actually having people do exactly what they're supposed to do, so that finally when you're rolling out Handtevy at your agency, it looks something like this, where you can see here that this crew is not leaving the scene. They're not rushing off of the scene. They're doing their job. No one's talking to each other, and everything's very choreographed. And the dosing and the airway sizing was all known before they got here. The one thing that's really missing here is that you don't see the mom or the dad there. We would have an officer talking to them, telling them why we're not leaving the scene. Stand right next to us. We know this is stressful. We're going to be heading out to the children's hospital in a few minutes. So that's all scripted, and this is how you get a great outcome on the scene. And so this data is known to us. We know from this is now a 5-year-old paper saying that staying on scene works. The problem is nobody knew how to do it, and nobody knew why we couldn't just do it. And the highest survival to discharge is actually, guess what? Treating kids like you would an adult. And here's what happens if you don't treat kids the right way. Actually, before I get to that study, let's talk about the epinephrine, because I told you I'd come back to the epinephrine. Why is epinephrine important? It turns out that there's a study in 2018, this is one of a number of studies, showing that early epinephrine, meaning within the first 10 minutes of arrest, is much better than late epinephrine, meaning 10 minutes after the arrest originally happens. And you can see that in kids, for every minute that you delay epi, you have a 9% decrease in odds of survival. So of course, high quality BLS is number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But when you get to the scene and you do that high quality BLS care, the next step is to drill the bone. We prefer the distal femur in arrest, and then give the epi really fast. And really fast means within 5 minutes. And you're probably thinking, of course I can do that, right? It's so easy to do, but the data suggests otherwise. So what do I mean by that? Paramedic 2 trial. Many of you should know this trial. It was in the New England Journal of Medicine. Here's what they did. This was only approved in England. It would never be approved in America. They took 8,000 English adults, 4,000 got epi. These are all in arrest. 4,000 got epi, 4,000 received placebo, meaning that the paramedics still opened the box, still flipped the cap, still screwed the epi together, but it was saline, and they didn't know it. The patient didn't know it. The doctor didn't know it. Only the research team who looked at the data knew it. And look what they found. They found that, hey, well, what do you know? We got ROSC and survival to the ED 3-fold higher. But that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for survival to discharge, neurologically intact. And it turns out that that number was no different, right? 2.2 and 1.9. They basically said epinephrine doesn't work. But it turns out that the time it took to get the epinephrine on board from the time the patient fell over was 21.5 minutes, and 16.5 minutes if you calculate it from when the first medic arrived on scene. So what I'm trying to say here is that don't believe the hype when you hear epinephrine doesn't work. Get the epi on quickly and then look at your data, and I'll show you a very large study that looked at that exactly in a little bit. So here's what we're gonna try and convince you with Handtevy, and this is part of the nudge. Get on scene, bag the patient, compress the chest at 110 a minute, drill, and then give epi as needed. And you know, early on, I would say to you 2 minutes. And then as your department gets better and better, and you get the next save and the next save, the 2 becomes 4, becomes 10, becomes 20. And my metric now is that I want to see my crews stay on scene for high quality BLS and at least 3 rounds of epinephrine. Then they can leave. And I can tell you, I don't have to force them anymore. I read the report. They call me, hey doc, great call we just had, and we stayed on scene. It was awesome. Okay, we got a great outcome. That's what I'm talking about. And if it turns out if you rush off the scene and you get a pulse 20 minutes later, you shouldn't celebrate, because new data has come out. Actually, this is not new anymore, 2018, that those kids who get a late pulse, their heart is fine, but their brain is not fine. And they have hypoxic ischemic injury, their brain swells, they herniate, they die, but they don't die on the spot. They die 24, 48 hours later. That is the problem. And so this is what we plan on doing for everyone in the country. We've already done it for 1,300 agencies and cities. We'll show you some outcomes here in a minute. But now you're probably wondering, well, okay, this course sounds interesting, but what about it? So let's talk about the course a little bit and kind of get to that. We started years ago now with a 4-hour live course, meaning that we were running instructor courses. You become an instructor, you go back to your department and you teach everyone Handtevy, right? And that was essentially, you only had to pay to become an instructor, and then you only had to pay 15 bucks if you wanted the certificate. But I mean, it was that simple. So the amount of money people were spending on PALS was quite a bit. And then the Handtevy course came around, but more so than just the cost of it, it promotes confidence. We help you get to closure, talk to families, know how to drop medications, and then we throw in all the modules. But then what I highlighted in yellow is something that we're really excited about, which is Prodigy, which I'll talk about on the next screen. That cuts that 4-hour live course to 2 hours online and then 2 hours in person. So let's take a look at the courses now. ACLS on the left, PALS in the middle, and then Handtevy on the right. You can see that for the science box there, we don't pretend that we're making the new science, although we're involved in a lot of research. But we're basically curating the best science and we're putting it into the course. And then everything else is the same, right? The science, the airway, the access, the team, the assessment, we teach everything the same. Then we add things on that are not in a typical PALS course. And it's mainly the hands-on component that makes the biggest difference. And I know that we have some people on today from Wake County, Mallory, who did an amazing job with her research, which I'll show in a minute. Thank you so much, Mallory, for all you've done. But this is Wake County rolling out the Handtevy course in a hands-on fashion. So when it comes to now Prodigy, Prodigy is an online resource tool that I'll have a slide up here in a minute for, but it's one of these things that the first time I saw it, I was completely blown away, because it's better than any learning management software I've ever seen, because it allows you to have live courses. So you can actually sit there and be live with your membership. But we're going to be using it in their online modules, and they're using it just for Handtevy. You don't have to be a member or pay a fee for using Handtevy, but it will actually allow you to see really how nice that tool is, which I'll show you in a minute. So let's talk about some of the data here. So like I said, we've been doing this for quite a long time, a decade now, and it took some time for this to happen, but this is the county in middle of Florida. In 2012 and 2013, they had 38 arrests and none of them survived. So that's when we got the phone call and they said, Pete, it was Dr. Paul Banerjee, he says, Pete, you got to come up here. I don't know what's going on, but I can't get any children back to life. So we started them off and we got them running with it. And you can see here 2012 and 13, no survivors. Then suddenly in 14 and 15, they got 17 ROSC in blue and 13 neuro intact survivors. I mean, that's pretty incredible for what they had the year before. And then they went to 17 neuro intact survivors. These are people kids who are playing soccer again. And so these numbers are just incredible, and the numbers have gotten even better. But let me show you why. Remember the number 16.5 minutes? It's exactly how long it took them to get epi on board prior to Handtevy. Then it went to 7.3, and then it went to 5.4. So what I'm trying to say here is that part of the confidence, part of the knowing what to do before you get there, part of the looking people in the eyes and staying on scene, you have to be perfect in those ways to get to this high quality CPR and the ALS side of the epi. There's no other way of doing it unless you're like, I call it SEAL Team 6. And that's what we make you, SEAL Team 6, right? Because we know we can do this. And then that paper was peer reviewed and published in one of the largest and most prestigious journals in 2019. You can find this on our website. Now, since 2016, you can see the data has gotten even better. So you can see the 2017 and 2018. I mean, Dr. Banerjee calls me every year and he says, Pete, I can't even believe what I'm seeing, because I didn't think it could get any better. And so I'm just so happy that we're able to get more kids back to life. More research, I'll show you. A lot of words on the slide, but there's really 4 significant things. One is the Denver study that was peer reviewed that showed a significant difference in errors with, between Brazzo and Handtevy. The Polk County study I just showed you. Wake County and San Antonio both put out abstracts. I mean, these are 2 mega departments. Both put out abstracts showing the improvement from Handtevy after initiating Handtevy. And so this is not rocket science. I mean, I always tell people this is not like, you know, there's nothing that we did special here. It's just that we nudged you in a little different direction. So before we end, actually, there's 2 additional things I want to talk about. And one of them I mentioned already, which was Prodigy. So prodigyems.com, go on there. James and Gibson are they're EMS people that just like us. They run a huge department and they teach a lot of people. And they said, you know what, we're so good at this, let's just do this. And it's really impressive. And I thank James and Gibson for really putting together a product that allows now Handtevy users to actually enjoy an online version of Handtevy before they go in and do the online, the hands-on content. I will tell you, this is in beta right now. We have a certain number of departments right now testing this and getting out all the kinks and making sure that from the Handtevy side, all the videos are correct. And once that's live, we will be the first to tell you guys. So thank you out there, James and Gibson. This is the part that really my favorite part, because we were working a long time to get this done. So this is a demonstration video of what Patrick showed you, but I'm going to focus now on the CPR assist. CPR assist is the metronome made by EMS for EMS type of thing. So let's kind of go through that. I'm going to pause it along the way. So here's the 6-month-old, and you can see now we added this little button here called Start CPR. So as soon as you're using Handtevy and you say, okay, we're going into code mode, start CPR, and as soon as you start, take a listen to what happens here. Okay, so I'm gonna pause it there. So you can see here that there's 15 to 2, which it defaults to. Then there's 30 to 2 in case you're a single person. And then once you get the advanced airway, you just tap on continuous. And you can see that as soon as that metronome starts, it gives you the number, the cycle, and right when it gets to number 13, 14, and 15, it'll give you a different sound right before you're supposed to ventilate. So take a listen.
Ventilate, ventilate.
Okay, so I'm pausing it again. So you saw that, and by the way, when it says ventilate, your light on your phone flashes once, flashes twice. Now let's move it to 30 to 2 just because. And it starts over again, and now the same thing's gonna happen. The same thing's gonna happen at 28, 29, 30. It'll make a different noise, ventilate, ventilate. So let me play that.
Ventilate, ventilate.
Okay, now you notice here that the 2-minute timer is going. the reset button, we'll get to that in a minute, and then here's your defibrillation and your epinephrine. At the same time, you can use Handtevy down here as if this wasn't even there. So Handtevy is fully functional while the CPR documenter is going. Let's keep playing. Now we're in continuous mode, where every 6 seconds it'll tell you to ventilate, and the adult every 10 seconds it'll tell you to ventilate. And for preemie and newborn, it's as a 3-to-1 ratio. So everything is modified based on the child you're in. You don't have to guess anymore at what to do.
Ventilate.
So now I just clicked on Epi. You can see that the CPR screen is still there. You're still visible, that dashboard. It tells you the dose. You can still modify it. All the regular Handtevy things, and we'll say given, and watch what happens next.
Ventilate.
Okay, so basically you have Epi now given once, and now a 3-minute timer starts. At 3 minutes, this will turn orange, and then it'll stay orange for 3 to 5, so that's your window, obviously. And then at 5 minutes, it turns red. So let's kind of, we'll forward it a little bit here, just to kind of keep you going. We can press defibrillation, and you just notice there that I can defibrillate. It gave me the dose. Now watch what's going to happen in 1:45. That's when we should be charging the monitor. Everyone forgets to do that. So here we go. Listen to the noise.
Ventilate.
Okay, so you heard the monitor charge noise, and this turns orange as a reminder.
Ventilate.
And then right at 2 minutes, we're going to remind you to check the rhythm, and then this turns red as a reminder that the 2-minute cycle is up, and and then that's when the reset button should be pressed.
Check rhythm. Ventilate.
Now at 2 minutes and 10 seconds, in case you forgot, we're going to remind you with a visual cue. Okay, so then I press reset, and now we start all over again from the CPR metronome side of it, and another 2-minute cycle starts. Now some of you were saying, well, I don't have the ability to hold this phone and manage this during the code, and I completely agree with you if you only have 2 people, 3 people. This is meant to just start the code, put it in your pocket, and it'll just go. And every 2 minutes, it'll just keep going. So once you have it in whatever you want, continuous or 15 to 2 or 30 to 2, you don't have to touch it. You don't have to reset it. And every 1:45, it'll charge noise, and every 2 minutes, it'll remind you. Now, obviously, you won't be documenting defibrillation or epinephrine, but hey, I guess that's at least half the battle. So what I'm trying to say here is that we made it so you can use it with hands-free, or if you had someone actually there to document each time the 2-minute cycle is up, you can actually press the reset if you'd like.
Ventilate. Ventilate.
What I'm doing here now, I'm using Handtevy underneath as if it was regular Handtevy.
Ventilate.
Yeah, I'm starting an epi drip.
Ventilate.
I'm getting my equipment.
Ventilate.
And now I'm going to show you here that you can press that little speaker icon, and you can take away the sound, the light, the charge monitor sound. So we give you the ability to toggle all the different noises. So believe it or not, there's a metronome sound, a ventilate light, a charge monitor sound, and a check rhythm sound. You can toggle all that on or off. We'll let you do that. And let me just forward this just for the sake of forwarding it. You can see what's happened at the you can see what's happened at the 3-minute mark. This turned orange, and then watch what happens at 5 minutes. And you can see that turns red. And then at the very end of the code, you say stop CPR, and then you can either skip the step or you can do check any of the nemesis fields that you see here, and then that gets sent over into your ESO or image trend as whatever outcome you have. So let me just play that through, and then it stops. And so we worked really hard on that. Again, we have a number of people, some on this call, who are beta testing it. We've already gotten some great feedback. It's already been used on live, I shouldn't say live, on patients in cardiac arrest with great results. And so if you want any more information on that, we will let you know, and when this thing ends up rolling out, but it may take some time until we get the feedback and officially roll it out, but that's something that's exciting coming forward. Okay, now let's put it all together here, and we'll finish up, and we'll open up to questions and answers. Bend, Oregon, some of my favorite people in the world live here. Peter and Amber Hosick. Peter is a captain at Bend Fire. Amber has been in the EMS community, and she's an EMS instructor, and she has her own she has her own company that teaches a lot of this stuff. And basically, they've used Handtevy for a number of years now, probably I think since 2014, if I'm not mistaken. And they have everything fixed. They have the layperson side fixed, the telecommunicator side fixed, and they surely have the EMS side fixed. And what I want to talk to you about is this case. And unfortunately, you can't hear the audio because it won't come through so well. But this was an 8-year-old girl who went into cardiac arrest. The parents started CPR. The telecommunicator did amazing CPR over the phone. Bend Fire gets there, and here's what they did. So the family got hands on chest in 30 seconds. Bend Fire crews get there, and they stay on scene for 40 minutes. 40 minutes until ROSC, transported to a local hospital, flown to the children's hospital. All the while, her brain was getting perfused because of the great compressions. They got epi on board. They actually countershot this girl, I believe, 7 times before they got a pulse back, all in the house, right? They didn't rush out of this. They weren't panicked, nothing like that. And of course, they were talking to the family. And then this is the outcomes, right? This is what the dad put on Facebook. I'm going to read, I get a little choked up here, but he says, so here's the payoff for 16 horrible and scary days. Kelly is finally off the ventilator and is making real headway to recovery. The final diagnosis is still gray, murky mess, but points to a genetic or metabolic cause. I pray none of you ever find yourself where we have been, but if you do, make sure you have CPR class under your belt. And I'll skip down a little bit. To the first responders go my family's undying thanks for never giving up on my daughter. So these parents saw this amazing team in their home for 40 minutes, and they took the signal that they never gave up. They weren't expecting them to leave because they told them they weren't going to leave. They told them why. And then this is the outcome. This is this beautiful girl who is perfectly neurologically normal today. And the reason she is because of people who actually took the time, made the small change. They converted their agency by putting people through a 4-hour course. So to people like Peter and Amber Hosick, thank you guys so much. And we love getting messages like this. And so yesterday we saw this message on Facebook, and I'm going to read it. Henry County Fire Department would like to share this amazing story. And they go through and they say they responded to an 18-month-old unresponsive, not breathing. Father was doing CPR for 7 minutes. So great job, that is true. Pediatric patient was pulseless, not breathing. They continued CPR, defibrillated the patient 3 times, secured the airway, continued with advanced care for 20 minutes, and then the patient had a ROSC, then loaded the patient and transported to the emergency hospital. Rescue 7 crew was helped from Engine 7 to continue to assist ventilations. Then the patient had to be transferred to Children's Hospital of Atlanta in Eggleston. That same crew took that same patient to Eggleston, maintained the pulse, and they continue to support ventilation. The patient has made a full recovery. And so that was posted. And then I got this, I got last night from the actual person who put this together, Billy, sent this to me. He says, this is the personal message to me. Check this out at our department Facebook page. If it is the only save that comes from implementation, it's worth it 1,000,000 times over. Thank you. As the training guy who wasn't there, I think I had more of an emotional reaction than the crew. So worth the work. And so what they did here, and so thank you guys, all of you guys out there, because it wasn't me, it was you. So all they did was they went from this to that, right? They fixed it. They made it like an adult, and then they had the outcomes that they needed. And so there's no secret. I'll say it over and over again, and it only takes one person at one agency to make the difference to make this happen. And those of you who are out there, you know who I'm talking about. So when I say treat kids like a little adult, what I really mean is I'm going to nudge your brain to treat them in the same way, the same manner that you treat adults. That's exactly what I'm going to tell you. I used to not say this so forcefully. I know it to be true today. It's 100% true. So with that, I want to thank the people. Remember, I may be the face of this company, but I'm certainly not the power behind it. You can see here that Allison, who's my better half, who's done just an incredible job putting together this amazing group of people, many of them who are on the call today. And so all the software we do in-house, all the education we do in-house, all our social media is done in-house. I mean, everything we do, we're basically, just people trying to make a difference. So I'm going to give you my personal information as well as Patrick's personal information. If you want a demo of the app that Patrick showed today, it won't have the CPR part in it. Only the beta testers have that, but you can use your phone right now to get this. It'll take you through a little screen. You'll put your name and your information in there, and then you'll get an email from Tylene with a demo code on it, and you'll just use that demo code with all the explanations in there as well. And then, like I promised at the very end, here's my Dropbox for COVID-19. We also recently did a webinar that's on EMS World now on all the testing stuff. So if you want, if you're still interested in getting all the COVID-19 stuff, there it is. But let's do this now, Patrick. Let's open it up for any questions, and we'll go from there.
All right, if anyone would like to ask a question through their microphone or call-in feature, there's an icon there on the control panel where you can actually raise your hand. You can feel free to do that, and we'll unmute you so you can ask. I'll turn it and type, of course, if you need to. All right, I saw some asked earlier, so let me go back to those. So Matthew Drake earlier asked if this is recorded, so it is recorded. It's going to be sent to you post WebEx. I think it should be sent by no later than tomorrow. So feel free to call if anything, but you should be getting it tomorrow. Do we provide a hard copy version of this? Yes, we do. There is a hard copy version of Handtevy Mobile found in the Handtevy medication guide. It's basically a spiral-bound book that you would have on each of your ALS apparatus if there was an interest. Serves as a great way to just have that extra kind of resource there for you. Is this a per unit per license cost? No, it's not. Again, it's a kind of like a pseudo enterprise solution, so it is based upon some different variables there at the department. And I can give you some more specifics on that if you wanted to share some of that information. Susan Dillard asked if you could repost the COVID information, please, Pete.
There you go. Is it showing now? I believe it's showing now.
Yep. Ken White. Hey, Ken, how's it going? How close are you to completing the Zoll interface? So there's two components of Zoll. There's RescueNet, as we all know it, and they recently just acquired EMS Charts, which I'm sure most of us know as well. So right now, being that RescueNet is not a cloud-based solution, it is stored locally from our understanding. The team at Zoll is first going forward with the integration with EMS Charts, since that is a cloud-based technology. And through that development, they are planning to kind of tie that into RescueNet down the road. But I can tell you that their plans for EMS Charts was to have it up and running by the Zoll Summit in June, which obviously now we know is canceled due to COVID. But I know that it is currently in development. It's going the right way. I met some of their team at EMS today in Tampa a few weeks ago, and things are looking good for it. So it's still working towards that, but it's progress.
You know what, Patrick, how about we get, let's see if we can convince him to do this. James from Prodigy, would you mind coming on the line? Patrick, can you unmute him? Because for some reason, my mouse is not working. James, you've done so much work on this, and you're on the line today. I really appreciate you coming on. Can you give us a little bit of background for those people who are interested, and kind of just, maybe give people 30 seconds on what you're doing, or a minute? Go ahead.
You should mute it, James.
Thanks, good. Oh, James, it looks like your microphone is working, but we don't hear you. I see the green on the microphone. I don't hear you though. Nope, still no. Okay. All right, we tried. I'm not sure what the issue is, Patrick, but all right, well, James, we'll give you another 30 seconds. If there's any other questions, we really appreciate all of you. How about if someone who's already using us raises their hand, and just because if we haven't heard from you in a while, just so we can kind of hear what your thoughts are, because I think it always helps for those people who are using us to actually give the unbiased opinion to the others. So is there anybody out there who's currently, Robert Sanders. Let's give Robert a chance. I'm going to make you a panelist, Robert. Let's see if that works. All right, Robert, try to unmute your microphone. Robert, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
All right, Robert, tell us, go ahead. How are you doing? Thanks for being the first person to get on the mic.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, sir. Go ahead. Yes.
Oh, hi, Dr. Chevy. Hi, Patrick. Yeah, my name is Rob Sanders, and I was on that initial Cape Cod instructor course that you referred to. So full disclosure, I was the one that went overwhelmed by System 2 and couldn't do math beyond 240. That was me.
I tell that story everywhere I go, by the way.
Oh, that was me. I overwhelmed System 2 right off the bat. Yep, that was me.
It's 240.
Yeah. So just a couple of things. I'll be quick. First of all, Patrick, yes, we know Florida got Gronkowski and Brady, so I don't want to hear anything about it. All right.
Well,
We're
it's not my
already done.
Florida team, so.
All right.
So
And
I got your.
I got your T-shirt. Thank you very much. I just want to pass on. I've retired from Harwich Fire Department and now working with South Shore Hospital in Weymouth, and done a presentation with them. And once this COVID stuff calms down a little bit, they've bought into it. So we'll be fully converting South Shore Hospital EMS to it. Part of that, I just want to pass on to other folks who are listening, the importance of when you're converting medics, EMTs, and systems, our medical directors, as Dr. Handtevy mentioned, is that relay the importance of the research and the concepts, and not just key on the sexy part of the app. That's so important. System 1, System 2, all the basic concepts of it. And when Mark Keller and I was with Chatham Fire Department and we converted most of Cape Cod, that was such an important part to have everybody buy into it. And to add on to that, and you mentioned that the first incident we had in Harwich, this was probably 2.5 years ago. I wasn't there, but we had a young girl, tib-fib fracture, stayed on scene and explained to the mom why we were staying there, getting the right dose of fentanyl. And the paramedic said instantly the mom's confidence changed and we could have done no wrong. So I just want to reemphasize a couple of concepts that Dr. Handtevy always pushes forward from the street level. And the last thing I'll leave off with, when you're doing your courses, it's so important to make the EMTs such a big part of it and improve their confidence, because really it all starts with basic EMS anyways. So the concepts, they're doing the CPR, they're grabbing the equipment, and familiarization with where equipment is, and everybody has to be part of the whole link in the chain, if you will. And a final thank you to all you folks. You're doing great work. And South Shore Hospital is Dr. Tolverson has met you at a couple conferences. So when I did my presentation and I brought forward the concepts, it really went over very well. And we're gonna go forward and convert. So. And I'll just, with that, I expect another free T-shirt, Patrick.
You got it. Robert, thank you so much. It's great to hear you, and I'll never forget that day when. And by the way, you set us up at a beautiful, beautiful place out there, and we'll never forget that either. So thank you so much.
That was Mark Keller. That was Mark Keller in Chatham. I just next door neighbor at Harwich, but Mark Keller did all that work.
Hey, well,
I'll send you a Brady Buccaneers jersey.
Before we end, Tyler has raised his hand. Tyler Morris, you're on.
Hi, Dr. Handtevy. Hi, Peter. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I'm a paramedic in North Georgia, over in Carnesville, Georgia, of a small rural county service of about 4,800 calls a year with 4 ALS units. But I'm also a PRN with Prisma Health Ambulance Service, who actually bought into the Handtevy system out of Greenville, South Carolina last year. I took my first Handtevy course yesterday. I'm also an ACLS and a PALS instructor, and I'm almost ashamed to say I've been teaching PALS after taking the Handtevy course. And so I've actually been on the phone with Katie at your office all morning to working on implementing the system at our county-based service. But I have a lot of older medics that have been medics half as long as I've been alive, and we've been doing it this way for 40 years. And so when I taught ACLS this year back in February, I was able to change some mindsets. We're working cardiac arrest longer. I had an 86-year-old gentleman about 6 months ago who had been down 25 minutes prior to EMS arrival with no bystander CPR. He was found in asystole after 15 minutes of apneic oxygenation, high-quality mechanical CPR on a Lucas 2 device. We achieved ROSC at the 35-minute mark. He did succumb later on in the emergency department, but we did achieve ROSC. We were able to hang an epi-drip and maintain that for about another 40-minute ride to the cardiac center.
Wow.
My question to that is how quickly do you anticipate the online instructor course being live?
I'm gonna give that to Patrick. Patrick?
That broke up there for a second. Can you read that last part of it?
He wants to know when the Prodigy course will be live.
Awesome. So right now we are more or less finalized with the kind of layout and build of the Prodigy option for training. The one thing we're waiting on right now is just some finalization of some contract points between our two companies, which obviously we don't need to get too into detail on, but that finalized points are in the process of being completed. So we're hoping that sometime here in the next few weeks that we'll be live and operational. But I know that we have a few of the Prodigy team members that are here on today's presentation. If you head over to their website, prodigyems.com, and reach out to them, I'm sure they can give you some insight on their side, or maybe even some kind of testing options for some of their kind of platforms. But very soon is the answer. We're just waiting on some finalization of some things.
I'm actually working on presenting. The purpose of this, me getting on here today with you guys is we have an EMSC, which is EMS for Children here in Georgia. There's some funds available, so we're looking at bringing you guys up through some of those funds to do an instructor class, maybe initially to at least get the education out with the hopes of implementing the entire system later on. So if you have any tips, I'm going to reach out to Doc Handtevy by email later on for any tips as I'm preparing this written proposal to them.
That's Norma Campbell, right?
There's had some change of hands here lately, so I'm not exactly sure.
Okay, awesome. Well, we do a lot of work with various EMSC programs throughout the country, over in South Carolina, North Carolina. I mean, we've even spoken to Norma Campbell, who was there in Georgia. She actually attended our Handtevy course last year at the Metro Atlanta conference. And on that note, I think we actually should be, I think the Metro Atlanta conference, which was happening on April 1st, got postponed due to COVID to, I think, the end of August. So I know that we are planning to still do a course through some course sponsorship from Wellstar out there in Marietta. So that should be coming down the pike here once kind of COVID settles down and once we figure out if the conference is going on or not. But they did already secure funding through UGA for that. So we're looking forward to any opportunities from your team and EMSC to come out as well and do some of those courses.
And Patrick, I see Amanda Perry said it is still Norma Campbell. So thanks, Amanda, for that. And Tyler, thank you so much for everything and for sticking your neck out and getting this done, and for coming on today. I can't tell you how much that means. Just hearing that from you is very, very important. So, and I'm trying to get James on, but his microphone doesn't appear to be working. But they're incredibly kind of easy to get in touch with, and they'll give you a quick overview of this just on a little WebEx. So Patrick can put them as well.
Yeah, Doc, I'm on with you. I don't know if you can hear me.
James, we can hear you. Go ahead. What's up, man?
All right, how's it going? Thanks for having us on. This was great.
Go ahead.
Yeah, as you had mentioned, we're happy to do a demo. The video and the product itself is ready to show. We've had a few services go through it and some users go through it and embed it, but we're happy to do a demo with anybody to show them what it looks like on the system, what the videos look like, what the product looks like, and talk a little bit about the flow from the online to doing the hands-on and the facilitator instructor piece. So we're happy to do that. As you had said, they can head over to prodigyems.com and find us, and we're happy to walk them through that.
Awesome. And I gotta give you guys credit. You guys gave me an Emmy-winning, award-winning producer, and the videos came out amazing. So we greatly appreciate it. And James and Gibson, thank you guys both so much. So, all righty. Well, Patrick, anything else, or are we good to go?
No, that's all I have. It looks like all the questions have been answered. But if anyone has anyone they want to ask offline, feel free to reach out to myself, Peter, Katie. Hop on our website. There's some forms there you can fill out, and one of our members will be reaching out to you. But thank you all for joining us today. And I know everyone's busy, so hope you guys have a great rest of the week. Stay safe out there, and hope to see you all at an upcoming Handtevy course or conference here in the near future.
And Patrick, just a shout out here to Katie and Ryan, General Core. They're both on. Thank you guys. Love you guys. You're the best. And have a good day, everybody. Stay safe out there. Wear your PPE. Thank you.